They never imagined that love would lead to tears. Not because it was wrong, but because the world insisted on saying it was. If you've ever believed that love knows no age, stay with us. And don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more emotional and exclusive fanfiction stories about your favorite stars. It all began quietly, tenderly, and almost unnoticed. Song Hye-kyo, the graceful actress with a smile that could soften the hardest heart, had never imagined she'd fall in love again. At least not like this. Not with someone younger. Not after everything she had already endured in the public eye. She was guarded, wiser, and more careful this time. Or so she thought. The man who slowly opened her heart again was not just younger. He was everything people thought she shouldn't want. The public adored her, respected her, idolized her, and they expected perfection from her. But love has a way of unraveling even the most carefully constructed walls. His name hadn't even made headlines yet, but behind closed doors, he was the reason Song Hye-kyo smiled again. They met on a set. Not her own drama, not his either. It was a charity gala they were both attending, standing next to each other during a photo call. He cracked a small joke about how awkward the poses were. She chuckled, not knowing that laugh would become a habit she'd come to crave. He was warm, grounded, and humble. And despite being younger, he carried a depth that intrigued her. They talked after the event, then exchanged messages, then met up again with no cameras, no lights, just them. Slowly, something delicate and beautiful grew between them. It wasn't the whirlwind passion people often mistake for love. No, it was patient, respectful, real. And yet, when news eventually leaked, when fans pieced together small clues and made bold assumptions, the internet exploded. Is she dating a kid? One comment mocked. He's just using her fame. Another spat out. She should be with someone her age. Dozens more echoed. And just like that, what had been her safe haven turned into a battlefield of judgment. It wasn't the age gap that hurt her. It was the betrayal from fans she thought would understand. The same people who had once celebrated her strength now tore her down for loving the wrong person. For weeks, Song Hye-kyo said nothing. She turned down interviews, declined event appearances, and even paused filming. Friends close to her said she was heartbroken. Not because of the relationship, but because of how quickly the world judged her for following her heart. The silence only made things worse. Speculation grew. Headlines twisted truth into scandal. Paparazzi camped outside her building, hoping to catch a glimpse of the younger man. But the man at the center of this storm didn't run. He didn't flinch. He stayed. Even when she tried to push him away for his own protection, he gently refused. If loving you is something they can't accept, then they never understood you, he told her one rainy evening as they sat in her living room. That was the first time she cried in front of him. And still the world kept talking. It wasn't until a month later that Song Hye-kyo decided to speak. She chose a quiet platform. An open letter posted to her personal account. It wasn't a press release, not a carefully edited statement. It was raw, honest, from the heart. She wrote, "I never imagined that falling in love again would make me feel so ashamed. Not because I did something wrong, but because I was told I had. I'm marrying someone younger than me. Is that a crime? Does age define how deeply we can feel? Should I deny the person who holds me when I'm hurting, who knows my silence, and never asks me to explain it?" The post went viral within minutes. Thousands of fans shared it, and for every judgmental voice, there were now dozens rising in support. People around the world began to realize what she had gone through behind the scenes. The strength it took to love and still be vilified for it. But the truth was, Song Hye-kyo hadn't written that letter to gain sympathy. She wrote it to finally stand up for the love she chose, for the man who had stood beside her when no one else did, and for herself, for the version of her that had once believed she didn't deserve love anymore. Their wedding plans weren't grand or loud. They didn't book a palace or fly guests to some secret island. Instead, they planned a small ceremony at a garden estate, surrounded only by those who had seen the truth of their love. It was a place filled with warmth, laughter, and tears. Tears not of pain, but of healing. On the day of the wedding, she wore a simple dress with no designer label, and he wore a navy suit with a slightly wrinkled sleeve. But they glowed. They didn't walk down the aisle with fear of what the world would say. They had already heard it all. Now they walked toward each other with only one thought in mind. This is our beginning. When the ceremony ended, she held his hand tightly, whispering, "Thank you for not letting go." And he smiled, saying, There was never a moment I thought of it. Photos from the wedding eventually made it online. Not leaked, but shared by them. A simple picture of them walking barefoot across the grass, hands intertwined, both looking ahead. There were no filters, no captions, no hashtags. Just the image. Just the truth. This time, the world didn't judge. Or at least, not the same way. Thousands of fans poured out their love in the comments. "You look truly happy," some wrote. "We were wrong," others admitted. The tide was turning. But Song Hye-kyo didn't need the world's permission anymore. She had finally learned that no validation was more powerful than the peace of knowing you followed your heart. The woman who once wept from the pressure of judgment now smiled at the future, hand in hand with the man who never let her face the storm alone. In private moments, they still read the early comments that had wounded them so deeply, not to dwell on the pain, but to remind themselves how far they had come. "Remember when they said I was too young for you?" He'd tease, and she'd laugh, replying, "Well, I guess they were wrong, because he wasn't just younger in age. He was wise in all the ways that mattered. And she wasn't just older. She was brave enough to love when it would have been easier not to." In a later interview, Hye-kyo said something that resonated with millions. "Love shouldn't be timed or measured by age. It should be measured by how deeply someone knows your soul. I married someone who sees me, not my past, not my age. Just me. And that was all she ever wanted." So the next time you hear someone say she shouldn't have married someone younger, remember this story. Remember the tears she cried, the strength she showed, and the man who stood beside her not because it was easy, but because it was love. Because at the end of the day, love isn't defined by numbers. It's defined by the courage it takes to choose each other, again and again, no matter what the world says. And in the quiet peace of their home, where cameras can't follow and judgment can't reach, Song Hye-kyo and her husband live a love story not many will ever truly understand, but one that's real, powerful, and absolutely beautiful. Of course, here's the continuation of the fanfiction, seamlessly picking up where it left off. This final segment completes the full 2,000-word script in the narrator voiceover style, keeping the tone consistent, emotional, and engaging for your audience. But love doesn't end at the wedding. That was just their beginning, a bold first step into a world that was still learning to accept them. Though the noise outside eventually faded, they knew there would always be whispers. That's what comes with fame, and Song Hye-kyo had long accepted that truth. But now, she wasn't alone in facing it. The months that followed were filled with the kind of quiet happiness that never makes headlines. Morning coffee shared in pajamas. Handwritten notes tucked into bags before leaving for work. Random dance sessions in the kitchen when their favorite songs played. There was no glamour in those moments,